Hi and welcome to the channel. Now, we wouldn't normally do an audio-only file on YouTube, but this is an in-depth interview with David Richards, the chairman of Prodrive, the world's most successful multi-discipline motorsport business, which has wins in World Rally and World Sportscar titles, Le Mans and much more besides. It was recorded for the 100th episode of Autocar's My Week in Cars podcast, which you can find wherever you get your pods. So, I hope you enjoy the show. Hi here, Steve Cropley. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm overwhelmed with glee because it is episode 100 of the My Week in Cars podcast.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Well, yeah, given that they said, do you remember, they went nearly 2 years ago, they went, lads, can you just do, I don't know, 6 to 8 episodes as a trial run, something like that?
I've forgotten that completely.
Yeah, and here we are. Somebody went, just keep doing it, will you?
Yeah, so this represents officially 50 hours of running off at the mouth, except...
I mean, officially, but yeah, as is our way, we have over-delivered slightly.
So it's probably more like 70.
Yeah, probably 70 or 80.
That is, I mean, assuming that you're awake, I don't know, 15 hours a day.
Think about this.
That is,
don't think about this.
That's pretty much a week of talking.
Yeah, but that's quite a long time, isn't it?
It is.
It's no wonder I don't bother pairing socks. With this sort of stuff going on. I mean, who's got the time for that sort of stuff?
Who has?
Well, it's been and continues to be and will continue to be for some considerable amount of time, I hope, a pleasure, mate. I've really... it's a... Sorry, listener, I'm just getting a little gushy. This is one of the most fun things I've ever done in my career.
God, you say that. I mean, I privately feel this, but I often sort of wonder whether you're sort of tolerating poor old fart.
I really like it. Because the thing I don't like about writing is the writing, and yet the thing I really enjoy about this is the coming and nattering to you. It's just, it feels. Well, as one of our listeners said the other week, it's like listening to two old mates in a pub over a pint or five. Not totally sure about the 5-pint thing, but still, yeah. It's. But anyway, what have we got lined up for episode 100?
Well, we're going to go to Prodrive and link up with David Richards, the CEO there, who has an anniversary of his own. I think they've been in business for 40 years, and he's going to tell us about it. And of course, because it's such a varied and a sort of eclectic sort of business, he's got lots to talk about, so it should be fun.
Yeah, so that is coming up in just a moment. Normal service resumes, or thereabouts, resumes with episode 101 thereafter, although we are going to record that, I think, at Caterham Cars, if all goes to plan, fingers crossed, and we'll be talking to Bob Lashley, the CEO, but there'll be the usual nonsense. More of that next time. Meantime, on with the interview. I'm delighted to say that Steve and I have been joined by David Richards, chairman of Prodrive and Motorsport UK, and many other interests besides. David, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
That's great to see you both.
Steve, you've known David longer than I have. Give us the intro.
Well, it's pretty difficult to define. I was trying to...
I'm worried what's to come here.
Well, I was trying to define Prodrive because the reason we would like to involve you in our modest 100th episode is because you're celebrating 40 years of Prodrive, which is a pretty big deal. And there's a feature in the magazine to follow it, and I was trying to define it. And you call it the world's largest or most successful or something independent motorsport business. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's an engineering business. It's a composites business. It's a kind of... It's a whatever strikes you as a good idea business, isn't it?
It's evolved over the years into something of a sort of, I don't know, these things do take their own destiny at times. And one assumes that companies of our nature have a very clear strategy that they work to, and you end up where you set out to go to. And sometimes that's not the case. And I wouldn't wish it to be the case either, because I think businesses should evolve with the people around them. They should evolve with the circumstances they grow up in. And you shouldn't be afraid to allow that to happen almost on an organic type basis.
It's interesting beginnings, aren't they? Because on the one hand, you seem to be, you became a world champion in rallying, but then you gave it up quite quickly because you seemed to me to see the appeal of business, but you didn't sort of have you weren't straitjacketed at all, were you? You just kind of opened up the windows to see what was available, didn't you?
Yeah, well, again, when you're a small business, you don't have a lot of options, actually. And quite frankly, we used to wait to see who would come through the front door and see what ideas they came up with, and off we go. It was, it comes down to early days in business. I'm sure younger people, probably my kids, are far more organized than I ever was. They probably sit down, set out a plan, put a business plan on paper and say, right, that's where we're headed off to.
But it was the opportunities, wasn't it? You were presented with almost immediately with an amazing opportunity to go and organise a rather large motorsport event, didn't you?
Yeah, we've had lots of opportunities come along, and I'm sure all of us sit there and, whether you have opportunities in life every day, whether it's whatever modest level that might be, it's the real thing. The real challenge is to pick out the opportunities and make them work for yourself. And we've always been quite adept at that. I think we're not frightened to take on challenges which others might think are sort of ridiculous or impossible. I remember, jumping the gun a bit now, moving on to Subaru, when we set out with the Subaru program, and everyone said, wow, little car company in Japan, Subaru. And we said, no, we're going to win the world championship. Subaru didn't believe it, but we did.
Yeah, amazing. But that was a matter of taking advantage of an opportunity, wasn't it? Because you'd had this rather successful BMW program, which was both in racing and rallying, wasn't it?
Correct.
And then something happened. Tell us about that.
That was a wonderful fellow called Mr. Kuze, and he went to the Safari Rally. He'd seen our team operating the previous year, remembered us, came back from the Safari Rally and said he'd like to meet up with us and have a talk about the possibility of Subaru going into the World Championship. And he'd been given a clear mandate from the president of the company. That's what they should be doing. A new generation of car coming along. They want to promote it, give it a sporty background, etc. And so he turned up on the doorstep on his way back from Safari. We had a meeting with all the key people, many of them still around me now. And we said, we can do this for you. And by the time he got back to Japan, we had a proposal sitting on his desk. And I remember him writing to me at the time and saying, if this is how you respond to things and how you work, I'm sure we're going to get on really well. And he's probably one of the lost characters in the Subaru story, because he was the true father of the World Rally Championship program for Subaru. He was the one that created the idea. He was the one that nurtured it, and without him, it would never have been possible.
Well, did he ever say no to anything? Because he seemed to be a sort of promoter, a conduit between you and...
He was the real link. Can you imagine? Two totally different cultures, and not just different cultures, different generations of people, from the Japanese and Subaru, a very traditional engineering company, to a very young sort of what we felt were dynamic little organization based at Silverstone at the time, we'd moved to Banbury by then. But even so, we were not conventional. We didn't fit into the straitjacket of a corporate entity that Subaru were used to dealing with. And we used to I'm sure he used to pull his hair out at times with things we did without asking any permission. We just got on with it.
Yeah. I think you told me at one stage that in the very beginning, you guys knew so little about Subaru that you had to kind of look them up. We did. And in fact, we all had company BMWs at the time. So we were all very, very, very closeted in our company BMW cars. And it was very clear that when these Subaru came along, we were all going to have to change. And I remember there were a few people sort of rather annoyed about that and upset about it, but not for long. When the next generation of Subaru cars came along, they became the sort of cult car of the time, and everyone was very happy. Well, that was kind of down to Prodrive, wasn't it? Because you must have noticed that the culture and the culture of the company changed, and also the cars became popular in Europe, and particularly in the UK, didn't they?
Yeah, but I think let's be clear, these things don't happen because of one individual, one company. It's a consolidation of a whole range of ideas. You need to give credit to BAT, who are our sponsors with 555, and Jimmy Rambacheski, who's their marketing director, who was just one of these creative individuals who said, this is how we're going to do it. This is what the car's going to look like. Keep it consistent. Then you've got to look at the engineering team that we had both in Japan and with David Lapworth and his team in the UK. And then the drivers, the iconic Colin McRae comes along, and all these things mix together, and somehow you blend them together and you get some extraordinary outcome.
What was the size of Prodrive at the time?
We're probably about 60, 70 people at the time, maybe, or thereabouts. I remember seeing early photographs of the team going to events, and everyone would have to come. You know, if you made the tea in the office, you had to come.
Yeah.
So that was that. But we were up against the might of Toyota, of Ford Motor Company, of Lancia. And so little Subaru sort of looked at this lot and, you know, rather pensively, and we'd turn up, I don't know, Cropley, and I would think that the bigger teams would go with an army of people, probably 120, 140 people. They've had trucks that would go out the night before and sort of position the tyres and do everything. We'd probably turn up with 40 people, and that's all we could muster. And we
for two cars.
For two cars. And we had Marco Alen, and in fact, the first year we just had the one car. But we then looked at this and said, well, you know what, we can't win like this. If we play the same game, we'll never beat them. So that's when helicopters came into the frame, and we said, let's go and fly everywhere. So
you invented this helicopter culture? I
wouldn't say we invented it. We adapted that to make it work for us. No one was using helicopters at the time. But we just said, well, if we get two helicopters, I got the chap who taught me to fly, myself, and we rented another helicopter, and I had one helicopter, and we just put everybody on board. I'm sure we're overweight and grossly sort of bad at the way we did this, but we just leapfrogged all the way around the route and on a Cropley rally. And we were everywhere.
So every time the car stopped?
We were there. We had the best engineers at every place. We had tyre drops, we had fuel drops and things where one person would go there and just put the fuel in the tyres, and we'd just land a helicopter on a rooftop or on a roadside or in the middle of a roundabout. It was really, those were the days.
Tell us about the arrival of Colin McRae. You know, he will be forever associated with blue cars and gold wheels and you know, lurid pictures and cars 6 feet in the air and all that.
Colin was, we'd known Jimmy for some little time, and I'd known Jimmy as a competitor because
he's dead.
Yes, that's right. He and Ari were great sort of competitors against each other in the British Championship and other events. And he introduced us to Colin. Colin could have been more than 18, 19 at the time. And he was due to drive a Ford in the British Championship. And we met at the Autosport show, in fact. And Jimmy said, it looks like it's all fallen through. I don't think they've got the budget to do it. And we just started with Subaru. And I said, well, I don't think we've got the budget either, but I don't want to miss this opportunity. Let's put him in one of our cars and work out how we find the money later. And so, and that's how we went about it. So the first year it was a bit sort of hand to mouth, but the good thing about it was at World Championship level we were struggling. First year out, it was not going to be easy. At British Championship level with Colin in the car, we were winning, and that kept the morale high in the team and sort of gave us sort of a big boost. And so that was a vital part of the sort of dynamics of the team at the time.
They wouldn't let you use an Impreza in the first instance, would they?
No.
What was the dynamics of that?
Oh, well, we started with the Legacy. We always knew that the running gear from the Legacy would transfer straight into an Impreza, which was a smaller body car. It was a lot stiffer. It was a lot more compact. But in Japan, there was a bit of a sort of thing about the Legacy. They felt that they couldn't really change to the new car until the old car had succeeded and won. They didn't want to leave the old car with any sort of negativity around it. And as luck would have it, Colin won in New Zealand, because I don't know what we'd have done next, because all we were planning was to move to the Impreza on the next event.
And of course, then it all...
It just rolled from there. Once you start winning, it's often the case. Once you find that secret ingredient and it all comes together, then it just builds from that point onwards.
What does it feel like? I've often wondered if I was sitting on top of something that was serially successful, expected to win and all the rest of it, and you had really quite a lot of seasons of that, do you start, what's it like being the temperament, what's the temperament of the team leader? Do you start thinking, what the hell am I going to do next? Or
no, I think that's often the challenge for anyone, any sportsman, any team, football team, whoever it is. You win one year, and to keep the momentum going the next year. And I think in motorsport, it's even more difficult because you've got technical advances as well. So to actually keep that momentum up is quite a challenge. You've got to, and it takes an interesting dynamic inside the team to sort of, get to Christmas and sort of all breathe a sigh of relief, collect the awards, go home, have a break, and think, oh, I've got to do it all over again. And you're the favourite this time. So that takes a real dynamic inside the organisation to sort of build the morale and get the whole team operating properly.
Was it still a small team compared to some of the competitors?
We were always a small team. We were always a small team in those days. We grew over a period of time, but relative to the factories, the big factories, that's the way we would have it as well. I think we were, hopefully, I consider we were more efficient in those days. And when I look back or look forward, going back now forward 30 years, and look to what we're doing with Dacia for the Dakar, that's the way we're going to approach that as well. We want to be the most efficient organisation out there. We don't want to be the team that just has the deepest pockets and wins because we've got more money than anybody else. We want to do it in a clever way. We've got a best engineering, the best team, best drivers, and just do it very, very efficiently. And I think that's true to the brand of Dacia as well.
Tell me more about this Dacia Dakar. Assume the listener knows nothing about it, what's going to happen?
Well, we've competed on Dakar Rally now for the last 4 years. We set out with our friends and our partners in Bahrain because the Dakar Rally moved to Saudi Arabia, and on the doorstep of Bahrain, and they'd historically had a lot of interest in the region in rallying. So we built a car from scratch with their support from Bahrain, and we had Sebastian Loeb on board. And
this was the Hunter, wasn't it?
The Hunter, that's right. And it's been it was an incredible car as a starting point for us, and we learned an awful lot during that period of time. It's been it was very successful out of the box. It was you can't take anything away from the success of the team. It was. But never quite got to that top step of the podium. It's been on the podium many times now and always fighting, sometimes more stage wins than any other cars, but still not winning outright. And so the new car, it's a clean sheet of paper. It's not there's no carryover as such. It's obviously a different engine as well for Dacia. It's a different body design. Lots of learnings from the previous car, but and lots of experience in the team now. So driver lineup, we've managed to get Nasser Al-Attiyah to join us as well. So he's current world champion and Dakar winning many times over. Seb is still determined to get his first Dakar win, and we'd love to see him do it with us.
Has he not won one?
No.
Of course, you expect him to have won everything, don't you?
No, it's the one that's eluded him and one that he'd love to win most, but he's still got time yet. And, you've got Carlos Sainz still competing on Dakar at 61 years of age. So that sells you all. And winning it last year at 60 years of age. So, and then we've got Cristina Gutierrez, who's been driving for us. She won the championship with Extreme E with us. And so she's a great addition to the team. So it's a car that Seb describes as a world rally car on stilts. It's just sort of, it'll travel over any rough ground. They're testing, as we're recording this today, they're testing in Morocco at temperatures of 47 degrees, they were telling me yesterday. A lot of interesting heat challenges for not just the mechanical elements, but the driver and co-driver as well in the car. So, extensive test program going ahead. And by the time we get to Dakar next year, we'll run a lot of miles.
So 25 is when it runs in anger.
Well, we're going to enter Morocco Rally in October as part of our test program, so just benchmark ourselves at that time. But the first Dakar is in January 25.
What engine is that? I'm not clear on the.
Well, Dacia, of course, is part of the Renault group, as is Nissan, so it's an engine from the group.
Oh, I see. Okay, but what's allowed? Anything?
It's I can't remember the rules. I'm not so that's not my area, but basically they're 3 litre twin turbo V6s thereabouts, quite well constrained. They have to retain a lot of the standard mechanicals as well, so you don't you're not allowed to sort of do anything extraordinary, or so it's based on a base engine. So it's and they're restricted to around 400 horsepower.
Nissan are now good at 3 litre V6s.
I think so. Yeah. And that's what from memory, that was one of the things about the Hunter that some of your engineers were saying, is because it was a Ford V6 with standard mechanicals, it was pretty trustworthy, and you wouldn't need to take it out and look at it and take it apart.
You're quite correct. It was a great engine.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Gosh, it seems right for Dacia, doesn't it, to do that sort of event?
Well, I've got this dream that I hope we can do for Dacia what we did for Subaru.
Imagine that.
I think there's every reason to think that will be the case.
Wow,
that'd be something.
In the meantime, while all this sort of loose surface stuff's been going on, you also got extremely heavily involved with racing Aston Martins, didn't you? At one stage you were the chairman of Aston Martin. How the hell did that fit with all the other stuff that we've just discussed?
Well, there's a long story. I don't know where we start with that one. It really goes back to my love of Aston Martins from
this is childhood love.
Many years ago. Yes. And so when the first opportunity came to buy one, I managed to save up and buy a car. And I've actually had a wonderful DB6 Volante that I've driven now for sort of over 30 years. And I have the same car and I use it all summer and drive it all the time. I used to go to Aston every year and knock on the door and sort of basically say, look, isn't it about time you went sports car racing? And, we're down the road from you. We'd love to do that for you. And I got sort of, well, thank you very much. That's very nice.
This is with a succession of CEOs.
Oh, yeah, succession and Walter Hayes, everybody. And I used to get the sort of standard answers. Oh, well, thank you very much. Good to see you again this year, but don't call us. We'll call you. And off I'd go again. And then one year I turned up and the DB9 had just come out. And I said, you know what? This DB9 looks exactly the thing to go racing with. And they said, yeah, you're probably right, actually. It probably is the right thing to go. Uli Betts was there at the time, but Ford owned the company. And the Ford people said, you know what, well, make a proposal and see what, we could do. And I made a proposal that basically said, look, if I'll take all the financial risk, you basically sign over the commercial rights to motorsport for us for 5 years, which allowed us to sell the cars, sell the parts, do the merchandise, and raise the sponsorship. And we'll run at Le Mans for you. And we came to a very simple agreement. I'd love to know where it is now. It's a 1-page agreement with Ford Motor Company. I don't think they've ever signed such a short agreement. And off we went, and we won the first race at Sebring. And it did take us a few more years to win at Le Mans. We were 2007 before we actually won at Le Mans. But it was a great start and a relationship that goes now for over 20 years. And recently culminated in us winning the 24 Hours of Spa as well. So it's worked for us both. And then most strange of things. And we talked earlier about how opportunities come across you every day of the week. It's just how you identify opportunities and what advantage you take of them. And a chap came to buy a race car from us in 2007 or 8, around about then, 2008. And I was asked to take him out for dinner and sort of just look after him. And so I did. I had a very pleasant dinner chatting away. And the company, Aston Martin, was just been announced it was for sale. And he said, why don't you buy it? I had to point out to him that I didn't have the $1 billion that they were asking for. And he said, don't worry about that. I find the money. You just go and be the front man for it. And I knew all the Ford people at the time quite well, and we got a very good reputation with them. And so I made a few telephone calls. The next day we were in the bidding. And well, it's a long story, and I think you write a book about what happened over the next 6 months. But we ended up sort of one day, we were the winning bid for Aston Martin, and I was elected as chairman, and which I stayed on for 6 years. But of course, buying a sports car company on the cusp of a recession was not a great thing to happen to us, and the next few years were challenging, to say the least, with production levels dropping to half of what they had done previously. And but we came out of it, and we came out of it with a sort of and handed it over in good order to the next.
The cars were good by then, weren't they? They were.
We had the DB9 was a great product, and there were other special cars coming along as well. We're very restricted on the money we had for development and new models, so it was a tough period of time, but a great team of people and such enthusiasts as well for the brand, and that carries you through a lot of tough times.
The thing that I enjoy, like going to your place every time, but it's always great to see that the workshop is kind of half full of Subarus and the other half full of Astons, and there's a kind of racing cars never seem to die, do they? They if they're properly maintained and so on, they can go on forever. Subarus are distributed around the world now, aren't they?
Well, the interesting thing, of course, now is if I'd only kept one of each of the cars that we'd produced over the years, we're seeing the Ferrari 550s, which we built in 2003, selling for sort of extraordinary amounts of money, $12 million, I was told the other day for one. We're seeing Aston Martins selling at sort of many, many millions of pounds. We're seeing the first sort of the £1 million Subarus being sold as well. So, it's they've certainly moved on, and they all came, they're all quite reasonably got iconic status about them.
Yeah.
And do they still come back to Prodrive to be looked after, some of those?
A lot of them do. Obviously, there are small tuners around the world who will restore cars and stuff. But if you want to get it prepared by the same people that often did the original one, who we've got all the drawings, we've got all the parts, then people tend to bring them back to us. So if they've got some real value to them, they tend to come back to us.
You've still got David Lapworth on the strength, haven't you? So
yes.
I don't suppose he's at the coalface every day, but he's available, isn't he?
He's there a lot of the time. David's got his fingerprints on every single car that Prodrive has built over the years, and but now he sits on the board of Motorsport UK as our technical advisor. He's doing a lot of work with the FIA on safety work, but he does the bits he enjoys doing. So if anyone asks him, would you like to come and test drive a car, he'll be out there. And so he's in his race suit and his helmet, and off he goes. He's still a very good driver as well. I went round Millbrook with him not so long ago.
Yeah, he did for the P25. Remember, Matthew? He came out for that, didn't he?
Of course he did.
Yeah.
We went up to Anglesey, did he? Or something?
You spent some time with him.
Yeah,
did you,
you remember the day you and I?
Oh yes, that's right.
You and I were together going around the Cotswolds, and then we did a subsequent photo session, and David came out with the car and showed us how it should be really driven.
Oh,
it does need that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody to get the best out of it.
And then we went to
Anglesey. He still has a clean driving license, I think.
Amazing.
Did you, when you stopped competing in the World Rally Championship, have you competed competition since?
Well, competed? No, not really. I've sort of, I don't, as a matter of principle, I don't sit in any of the cars. All the drivers say, come on, I'm going to take you for a run. I know they just got one thing in mind, to scare the living daylights out of me. And so I won't go in any of the cars with any of them, despite Colin inviting me, Sebastian Loeb, everybody, as you can imagine. I've done odd things. Ari and I have done the occasional thing just on a charity events. My wife and I did Mille Miglia a couple of times. I've done some Flying Scotsman with Palomine Peter Lovett and sort of in pre-war car. And I've done a couple of GT4 races actually with I did one with Christian Horner, another one with who else have I do? Various people I've driven with in there, but nothing serious.
You said you liked Aston Martins from a young age. Do you have a thing for road cars?
Less so these days. I look back. The latest Exotica doesn't really interest me in the slightest, I'm afraid. I look back at the older cars. I guess it's a generational thing. You look back at the cars you lusted after as a teenager. So I look back at some of those lovely 50s and 60s sports cars, and those are the cars that sort of excite me more than a modern day supercar, which seems to have sort of endless performance and is extraordinary piece of equipment. As far as general road cars are concerned, I'm always impressed whenever I go to an airport and jump into the latest sort of offering from one of the mainstream manufacturers, how good they are. They're just extraordinary. I was in the other day a Volvo, and it was a modest Volvo, but it just drove beautifully, and it was just a great bit of kit. And sometimes you can forget that. You get drawn into, you drive the same old car for year after year, and you drive the old cars, and you don't realize how far the industry has moved in the last few years, and the competence of the latest cars.
Yeah, I think when we do performance tests of the latest stuff and how they brake and how they stop and how they steer is just, it's pretty remarkable.
It is. It shocks us, and we're supposed to be in everything.
Exactly. There you go. Imagine you just jump into these things every so often, and this quantum leap that they make.
Still amazing. Yeah. Tell us about your involvement with the governance of motorsport. You that's another big thread of yours, isn't it? You're chairman of Motorsport UK.
Yep.
And you've done a bit of a root and branch job on it, haven't you?
Well,
why?
Why? Well, obviously, I've been involved on the fringes of the sort of governance of the sport. I've been at the wrong end of the stick most of the time, but I've been I've been there, sort of watching from the sidelines, and I've always felt that the sort of governance of the sport was not necessarily the best interest of the sport. It was, and so various people persuaded me about 5 years ago that I should take over as chairman of the UK motorsport. And I sat and looked at it for a little while, and we talked to lots of friends of what needed to be done. And the fundamental thing that I felt was that the motorsport, MSA in those days, was a very good regulator of the sport. We were really good at writing regulations, at sort of at upholding the sort of the competence and the general sort of organisation of motorsport in this country. But motorsport as a governing body, I felt, had a duty to do more than that. I felt that our role was to promote motorsport in this country. It was all very well governing it, but if we were declining or we had an ageing participant profile, etc., that was we'd inevitably.
And that's what we did have, is it?
We did. We were losing license numbers. They were all declining, and I think the age profile. I'm not necessarily sure of my facts here, but I think the age profile was increasing slightly, and so. And also the way it was structured was fundamentally flawed. And we had a motorsport council that comprised of, I think, 38 people or thereabouts, and they were the people that governed the sport. And these poor people, who were experts in their fields, they were experts in whether it's hill climbing, car trials, rallies, circuit racing, they would meet once every 3 months or something like that, sit in a large room and debate about the rules of motorsport. And quite frankly, I just felt that was such a waste of that talent that we should be directing things in a very different way. So over a period of time, we managed to change the structure of motorsport in the first 2 or 3 years, alongside Hugh, who's the CEO now, Hugh Chambers, and a great team of people that he's built around him. We changed the structure such that those great minds, the council, 38 members or whatever it is today, became the upper house, the House of Lords of motorsport, in fact, to give their good counsel to what we should be looking at in the longer term. What are the big issues of today that we need to consider? Forget the little tiny rule changes that need to happen. Put that to a rules committee to one side. They can do that very easily. But these people should use their experience and their expertise to direct what we should be thinking about environmental issues, what we should be thinking about new technologies, how we should embrace a far more female participation and other ideas like this. We got a very good board of directors now who are across the board extraordinary people who have sort of given their time to the sport, not necessarily because they're passionate about the sport, but they just felt that it was the right thing to do, and they bring great talents from other areas as well. They're not all lived their lives in motor racing and rallying or whatever, circuit racing. They come with great ideas, and we changed the way of running the Motorsport UK to be a business that promotes motorsport in this country, that actually defends motorsport where it's in danger, and we have lots of issues there, of environmental issues we've got to think about, and also promotes it and engages with a broader public. So a good example would be the indoor karting that we've embraced in the last few years now, the biggest motor racing series in the world. 5,500 entries in a championship in this country in indoor karting.
Wow.
And,
Didn't know that.
I didn't know that, no.
Well, indoor karting, we never thought about indoor karting.
Yeah, I've always thought it as it's something people do for fun on a stag weekend or whatever.
Exactly.
But it is a motorsport.
But don't you think that's where people start from? And if you live in the inner city and you never had the opportunity to go motor racing before, don't you think you should go there and think, this could be my start to being a route to the new Lewis Hamilton? And that's what we need to do. And we need to open it up. We need to make it far more available to everybody. And that's what we've tried to do. And we're still on that journey, and we're still sort of moving ahead with things. But I would honestly say, and I'm very proud of the fact that Britain is leading the way in the way that motorsport ASNs, governing bodies, manage the sport in this way now.
I like that. The thing that stands for what you guys are up to, for me, is that Mini. That there's a fairly well-used Mini that stands outside the MS UK headquarters in Bicester now, Heritage, and it's perfectly standard car. A bit of decaling on it, but it sort of demonstrates what can be done with a standard car, doesn't it? And every so often you get some hero auto solo bloke who shows really how well it can be driven.
Well, I think that's the point. I think many people, because of the sort of dominance of Formula One on TV, look at motorsport and think it's sort of somewhere out of their reach. It's unattainable. You've got to sort of own a Formula One car and all that goes with it before you go motor racing. They don't realise that, as did I, when I was 17 years old and took my mother's car to compete on a driving test, a car trial, a 12-car rally, all these different things. You can still do that today.
What car was that?
It was my mother's Ford Zodiac, actually. And,
my word, big car.
Yeah, big car it was. We used to tell my mother we were going, my brother and I used to say we're going to the local youth club. We used to disconnect the speedometer on the way out the drive, and off we'd go. And we'd do some treasure hunt or do something with her car. And it finally ended up, its final demise was on a local bridge where I took the whole side out of it one night.
How was that received?
Well, I came back home late at night and I sort of parked it against the fence. I thought there was no purpose waking anybody up at this time. And I parked it against the fence and just went to sleep. And it wasn't until midday the next day my father went to mow the lawn and looked to the other side of the car that he found out.
What was your path from that to the World Rally Championship?
I was studying as an articles for a chartered accountancy in Liverpool at the time. And, I wasn't very good.
Having decided not to go into the RAF, right?
Yes, that's right. I had a scholarship for the RAF, and I had my flying license very young, as a month after my 17th birthday. And so I used to do little car rallies and things, taking my mother's car out, and I had a Mini at the time as well. And it was very clear I wasn't going to be winning a lot myself if I carried on driving or crashing rather than at that level. So I thought the other thing to do is to navigate. And I had some pals of mine. One had a Cooper S. And I thought, right, he's got the right car, so I'll navigate for him. And lo and behold, I was quite competent at that. And I ended up doing sort of a number of events and all over the place. And in fact, my final exams, I was due to sit my final exams on accountancy, and an opportunity came along to do the Welsh Rally. Now, if you live in Wales, the one rally you want to do is the Welsh International. And in those days, it's a pretty arduous event. It didn't stop from sort of Friday night through till Sunday afternoon. I think it was just fairly full on. And so I did the event. I think we finished we finished in the top 10, a guy called Tony Drummond from Yorkshire. And we finished inside the top 10, and I then went back and did my exams. I fell asleep in front of my exams, I think, the next day. I certainly didn't pass them. I thought I got away with it, actually, until a local newspaper ran an article, "Local Boy Makes Good," and my father read it. So that didn't stand me in good stead. But I never actually sat that final exam ever again. I've sort of never qualified fully. So but stood me in good stead. Always. So I think those 5 years were a very good learning curve for me. And then I had the opportunity to go out and do various rallies the following year, which I sort of took those opportunities and ended up with Tony Pond in the factory team at Leyland in those days.
And that was TR7s, was it?
TR7, yeah, that's right. It was.
That must have been a pretty interesting car. TR7 V8, was it?
No, it was the earlier engine, the Dolomite Sprint engine, before it came later. It was never a great car, I'm afraid, the TR7. And when you're up against the might of Lancias and Stratuses and 131 Mia Fioris and even the Ford Escort, which was starting to come into its own at that time.
And then you met Ari?
I met Ari quite early on, at that Welsh rally, in fact.
This is Ari Vatanen.
Yes, that's right.
Legend.
Well, I met him at that rally in Wales, and he ended up coming to stay with us for some reason. He didn't speak much English at the time, but we got on well. He comes from a little farming community up in the northern part of Finland, not dissimilar to North Wales. And so we just hit it off together. He didn't speak much English. I certainly didn't speak any Finnish. And we ended up doing the Scottish Rally together, where he won Man of the Rally.
Had he already established himself as handy? As good?
He had just come up over to Wales. Wales was the first time that, in Finland, he was beginning to be known. But when he came to Wales, that was where he sort of took his first sort of run up the ladder on the international rallies. And then we did Scotland. I think we finished inside the top 10. He won Man of the Rally. I remember the only thing I remember most about that was the prize for Man of the Rally was a gallon of Scotch whiskey, the biggest bottle of Scotch whiskey I've ever seen in my life. We never knew where it went either. Ari said he took it home. Ari wasn't drinking at the time. And so he took it home and put it in a cupboard in his mother's house, and it's disappeared. And nobody can ever find out where it went to. But anyway, that was, and then we did a couple of other things together, and then he went to Ford. I went to Leyland with Tony Pond, and then we've always kept in touch, and we got together again in '79. I think he'd been in the Ford team for a little while. He'd had quite a few quite big accidents, and so my turning up with a large check from Rothmans as a sponsor helped matters, and there we went. Ford pulled out, of course, at that time. And so David Sutton stood into the fray, and it was with a private team, with David Sutton's team in '81, that we actually won the World Championship.
Very interesting. And then, of course, the rest of your life began then.
It did. I often wonder what would have happened if we finished second. It's second. Ron Dennis always tells me it's first of the losers, but second's a very laudable place to finish, nonetheless. But it does make a big difference winning.
Great.
And then, how did Prodrive start from there? Where does it?
Well, I'd actually been doing things in the background already at that point in time. I'd sort of just little initiatives there and there, and various things. And I'd kept a very close relationship with Rothmans, the sponsors, who I'd known for many years because I'd been organising rallies in the Middle East for them as well. And at the end of '81, we got two small children, and it didn't seem like a great way to bring them up to travel around the world following a rally team. So I said, let's do something different. I went to the managing director of Rothmans at the time and said, look, I'm going to stop. Can we sort of think about maybe helping me set up my own team? And he said, well, we'll look at that in due course, but we've got an immediate thing now. We need someone to supervise our Formula One plans. And they just signed a sponsorship contract with March Formula One. And so I was thrown in the deep end and sort of go and sort that lot out. It's got a few problems. And, it did have a few problems. I ended up having to wind up the operation within months of me getting involved.
I think you the way you put it in an interview was that they failed to qualify for Monaco and some another. What was the sponsor? Marlboro cars were both on the front row or something.
No, you can't imagine anything worse. You invite all your guests to Monaco and neither of your car qualifies. And what's more, your main opposition, your main competitor wins. So it didn't go down very well. And that was, but as fortune would have it, I'd heard that Porsche were coming back into sports car racing. Jochen Mass was one of the drivers in the team. And
in the F1 team.
In the F1 team. And Jochen had obviously very good connections in Germany, and he was very close to the Rothman sponsors who were South African. And so we ended up going to Weissach and negotiating the terms of the Rothman sponsorship of the Porsche factory sports car team, which is legendary now.
Became extremely successful.
It was, and and great pals to this day, the likes of Derek Bell, like Jackie Hicks, and really great people.
Amazing,
isn't it? Yeah. And tell us about your later entries, involvement in Formula One. You've been sort of in and out of it over the years.
In and out of it, yes, I have. Well, we had the Benetton period, which we talked about already, and how I got involved in. Or have we talked? No, we haven't talked about Benetton, have we? I got Rothmans wanted, after our wins in the World Rally Championship, Rothman said we're going to go into Formula One, and I was invited to pitch for that. We were sort of obviously we knew everyone there; they were very close to us. And so I thought to myself, well, at the time, only 4 teams had won in Formula One. There was sort of Ferrari, McLaren, Williams, and Benetton. And the only team that could be purchased was Benetton. So I went down to see the Benetton family, talked to them, came back with a proposal that suggested we buy half the team and had an earn-out for the Benettons over the following 2 or 3 years. And it would be a joint arrangement. Rothmans didn't like this. They said, no, it's we want our own team. It'll be a new BAR, British American Racing Team. We want to do it from a greenfield site. We're going to do everything differently. Okay, I thought, well, I was disappointed, obviously, but that was what they decided to do. I thought it was a little bit challenging and perhaps foolish. And that was the end of that. Then I get a call from Bernie. He says, look, the Benetton family would like to have a chat with you again because they'd like you to go down and run the team for a year and mentor Rocco, their young son, to take over. So I ended up running the Benetton team for 12 months and trying to sort of develop Rocco to take over. It was a challenge. It was a very interesting period. I look back at it now. I went in really naively with my eyes really closed on what I was letting myself in for. Italian team, well-established organisation. They'd won previously. They were having real problems now. Trying to mentor a 20-year-old who was from a wealthy Italian family. It had all the makings of everything going wrong, and it did. And I came out of that pretty scarred, I would say, and wondering, if I ever get a chance again, I'll do this very, very differently. And then a couple of years later, I did have that other chance because meanwhile, BAT had set up their BAR organisation, all the fanfare. Didn't do well in the first year. I don't know if it even scored a point in the first year, and was eating money and was not getting the success. And Martin Broughton, the chairman of BAT, invited me along to come and have a chat and see what we do. And on this occasion, I said, well, look, if we're going to do it, if we're going to take it on and sort this out for you, we've got to have a real clean sheet of paper now. And I want a far more strategic approach. I want a 5-year agreement of how we're going to do it. And I want to take a team of people around me that I have confidence in and that are sort of we can gel together. I'm not going to be just thrown in as one person and sort of in this melee. And so we went in very well. And I think I look back on that period and it was very challenging. You immerse yourself totally in these things. You sort of, there's no way, you can't go into Formula One and think, I'll do it in a 9-to-5 job. I'll do it sort of, just in a normal working week. You've got to do more hours than you've ever imagined in your life. You've got to be totally focused on it and give up everything else to the exclusion of everything else to make it work. And it was a very challenging period of my life that I don't think I'd want to repeat again, if I'm honest with you, because it changed me a bit, and it didn't change me for the better. I've learned from the mistakes I made and the way that I personally behaved during that period, because I don't think I was necessarily true to myself the way I should have behaved. But we got the results, and
you did pretty well, didn't you?
Yeah, we were second to Ferrari. But if you're not careful, that sort of world, it distorts your values. And
do you mean it turned you into a sort of surly so-and-so or something?
Well, I don't know. I know that I wasn't the person I've gone back again now, I hope others around me might question that, but I certainly think I learned from that period of my life. And, I think for anyone, when you're thrown into the spotlight and you're given all this sort of adulation and credit, you change. And unless you manage that carefully, you change for the worse.
Yeah, very interesting.
But it was a great lesson, great lessons learnt. And we came out of that, and then Honda bought the team 2 years before.
So you built something that became successful.
Well, it went through its dips since then, but it's the foundations of what Mercedes is today. Interesting chatting to James Vowles. He was there throughout that period, and
he's a Williams guy now.
He's head of Williams, and hopefully some of the lessons he learned as he went through that gestation period will serve him well in what he's going to achieve at Williams. And we came out of it well.
Do you think Williams, this is a complete wild card, ridiculous question, but I just sort of smell a bit of success there coming along. What do you think?
I think so. I think they've got they're putting together the right ingredients there. It's still a lot will come. There's a lot of change going to come in 26. I think it's early days to see who the winners and losers are going to be in 26. With the new engine and aerodynamic rules, it's a very, very major change. We're seeing a sort of stability appearing now around the existing rules, and we've got one more year of those to go. You throw all the balls in the air when you come to 26, and I think there'll be a few people wondering what's going to happen then.
We're all desperate to know where Adrian Newey's going to land, aren't we? You probably know.
No, I don't. I've sat next to Adrian at dinners recently. I wouldn't dream of asking him. You're
politer than the average hack then.
Yeah, but he will no doubt decide for himself, or he might just sail off around the world for a year and have a quiet year. But no, it's a lot of changes on the horizon, I would say, with Formula One, and it'll be an interesting period.
Sure will.
One last one then. If somebody's on the M40 this morning, they drive past, they see the big Prodrive building. What's happening in there right now? Because it's not just motorsport, is it? there are special projects, unique projects. You've made parts for luxury Range Rovers and all kinds of things.
Well, yeah, there's I probably only know 3/4 of the things that are going on inside that building. Of course, we have our composites business in Milton Keynes as well, which is pretty substantial. There's still the motorsport side. The motorsport element today will be focused on building Aston Martin GT cars. We'll build about 80 of those this year, go all around the world, competing all over the world.
It's a lot of cars.
It's amazing business, isn't it? I'm really staggered by that.
Well, then think of the spare parts that we support for teams all around the world. There will be most weekends, there'll be teams competing in every country around the world that we sell cars to. So there might be there'll be 12, 15 significant races going on each weekend. And what's more, many of our engineers will be flying out to support the teams there as well. And then the parts will be flying out to support them. So that's the Aston Martin side of things, still a very important part of the business and something I'm very proud of. We're building P25 still. We haven't finished the build of the P25, which is this Subaru recreation, which has been so well regarded. Those won't finish till the end of the year. Taking a little bit longer than we'd hoped to build them. Then we've got the Dacia project, which is getting ready for Dakar. So a lot of testing going on at the moment. That's and still to build 2 new cars. They're quite complex cars to build. So that's got to be 3 cars ready for Morocco in October. We'll be restoring some of our old cars as well. We built a Mustang for Peking to Paris recently. That's sort of made its way around the whole event, and we're now going to build another 5 of those, sort of trying to give the Porsches a run for their money. Restoring some of our old cars as well. There's sort of always a queue of people who want one of their cars restored. We've only got limited resources for that. Something, an area I'd probably like to build on in the future as well. On the engineering front, we're doing a whole range of things, whether it's some of it for the military, some of it for historically we've done America's Cup. We're not doing that this time round, but we've done a lot of work in that area, hydraulic systems. We'll be making our bicycles. We make the lightest folding bike in the world. We're 6.9 kilos. We're doing simulators. We've got the simulator that we make for race simulator, which has proven very popular.
This is the instructions from your wife were that it had to be as worthwhile as good looking in a sitting room as a grand piano.
Well, that's the specification I gave to Ian Callum when we came up with it. During lockdown, I suggested, we're building a new house in Cornwall. I suggested, I'm going to have a racing simulator in that house. I think it'd be quite good fun, because in those days, everyone's doing 24 hours of Le Mans, a race simulator, all competing against each other, and things. Quite good fun. And I said, my wife said, over my dead body, you can have one of those things. They're ugly as hell. It looks like a bit of a Meccano set. You can't have that. So I thought about it a little bit. And I rang up Ian Callum, who's a good pal, who do work with together. I said, Ian, I've got a challenge. We're going to have to make the most elegant racing simulator you can find. I want a racing simulator people will change their grand pianos for, and that's what we did. And I think between us, we've come up with a great product. And meanwhile, on more serious matters, we'll be developing active aero systems for cars. We've got a sort of particular expertise in that area and done a number of cars for that. We're active interiors as well, where you've got sort of, you mentioned about the long wheelbase Range Rover. We worked on that with the central console for that and various other products there. And aviation as well. We do quite a bit of work in jet engine aviation work, sort of, and so you never know what's going to turn up. And people come along with ideas, and you think, well, that could be an interesting one. Let's do it. But the whole idea of Prodrive is to create a culture that is a make it happen culture, a culture that stems from our roots in motorsport. Not necessarily everyone can work in motorsport today, and probably less than half the people are working in the motorsport side of the business. But the whole essence of the idea is we don't take second best. We don't take no as just a roadblock. We just push the boundaries of everything we do, and it's a make it happen organisation.
Wonderful. David Richards, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.